different take on how we recover plastics and prevent this contamination. Oh, our final panelist this morning, before we move into a discussion section, is Honorable Jose Antonio Goitia from the Philippines. He's the Executive Director of the Pasig River Rehabilitation Commission. And from what I know about him, he has actually achieved the impossible by bringing back to life a river system. I just want to remind my speakers that because we don't have a clicker, please indicate for our technological team as you want to advance your slides. Thanks so much.
To the distinguished Cabinet Minister, Heads of States, Governors and Mayors of Kenya, to the great and noble leaders of Africa, and to the representatives from different countries and organizations, my ambassador, His Excellency Uriel Garibay, Governor Mike Sonko, the Governor of the Province of Kenya, and in behalf of my President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, and the Filipino people, Asante Sana, Katu Karibisha Hapa. Thank you very much for inviting us here. Habari ya Asubihi. Good morning to you all. It is my honor to thank His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, President of Kenya, for having a strong determination and political will in hosting and pioneering the first ever global conference in the sustainable blue economy. This is such a great event wherein countries would learn how to build a sustainable blue economy. Our river in the Philippines, the Pasig River, is 27 kilometers of tidal estuary that cuts across Metro Manila, with Manila Bay in the west and Laguna de Bay in the east. It is composed of 47 tributaries, with a watershed area of 600 square kilometers composing of 20 cities, municipalities in the metropolis and the Rizal province. It was a major navigational route for commuters and for transporting local and foreign traders, articles of commerce during the Spaniards' occupation of my country. The entire Pasig River's rich and emblemished bio-network in the olden days used to provide abundant economic benefits to the early inhabitants. However, due to the pressures brought about by continuous urbanization from 1930 to the 1980s, the water quality of the river deteriorated as it became a vast dumping ground for all sorts of garbage, industrial waste, and pollutants. Sadly, in the 1990s, our river, the Pasig River, was declared biologically dead. The Pasig River Rehabilitation Commission was created in 1999 by then His Excellency President Joseph Ejercito Estrada. It is the lead agency in harmonizing the rehabilitation and development efforts of the Pasig River. With its members from different national and local government agencies and potent partners from the private institutions and non-governmental organizations, the Pasig River was set for a huge transformation. Since its creation in 1999 and concurrent with its 4 core rehabilitation programs, it has achieved substantial accomplishments in easement recovery, riverbanks development and flood control, water quality improvement, and public information and advocacy and tourism. Now, thanks to the leadership of His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, in aiming to accelerate the rehabilitation and development of the Pasig River by including into his priority economic agenda the Pasig River Ferry Conversions Program. Some of the tributaries and developed Estero de San Miguel. This is one estero in the heart of Metro Manila. Estero de Aviles, Estero de Valencia, Estero de Paco, and Estero de Uli. This was really wrought with pollution and garbage, but look at it now. The San Juan River, one of our major tributaries of the Pasig River, has been identified. This is where 40% of pollution in the Pasig River comes from. For lack of pecuniary resources and equipment to appropriately address the horrendous perennial situation in this river, substantial number of human resource from the two quick response team I put up in the commission, the River Watch Group and the River Warrior Group, have to be dispatched from time to time to do the massive cleanups manually for the use of floating rafts. We know that these cleanup drives are only a panacea to soften an impact of a current situation. These are undeniably insufficient to thwart other persistent problems arising from continuing pollution. To change the perception and attitude of affected communities towards the uses and benefits that could be derived from well-cared waterways, as well as to win the support of our existing and prospective partners, we have intensified our efforts in pursuing various public information and awareness programs. Highlighted by the slogan, Puso para sa Ilog Pasig, that's a Tagalog word for love for the Pasig River. One of the perennial challenges posed to the PRRC is the uncontrolled and sudden proliferation of water hyacinths, especially during rainy seasons. Although these are not considered as solid waste, they basically impede the navigability of the river, hamper the movement of merchandise and patrons of ferry operations, and reduce the flood conveyance capacity of the river. Water hyacinths, however, are found to have economic benefits to offer. Would you believe that? Properly processed, they can be woven to produce various handloom products like table mats, fans, slippers, bags, drapes, decors, etc. Thus, it provides an opportunity to generate employment and income to the marginalized communities along their waterways. The PRRC, through its research and project development, is utilizing the phytoremediation capability of water hyacinth to absorb pollutants in the waterways. We are also looking to adopt the composting technology wherein water hyacinths and other organic waste will be converted into soil fertilizer. The facility will be located in the confluence of the Pasig River and Laguna de Bay. We are also looking at the potential of water hyacinth as main ingredients for the production of charcoal briquettes and fertilizer for plants. Our commitment to the reduction of domestic liquid waste pollution that is being discharged directly into the waterways have been solved through a series of negotiations with a potable water distributor catering to the water needs of households and industries in the metropolis. PRC was successful in securing access to the company's existing wastewater interceptor and treatment facilities, such that all households are connected to the latter sewerage system prior to the establishment of PRRC linear park projects along Esteros. We are proud to share with you that the Philippine government's effort to rehabilitate the Pasig River is gradually progressing. The Pasig River indeed refused to die, and signs of life are manifest in the entire span of the river right now. In fact, in the 2009 study conducted by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, several species of fish, birds, trees, aquatic plants are now thriving back in the river or within its embankments. We firmly believe that the PRRC is consistent with international standards in terms of river and river basin management. Proof to this is the honor we brought home to our country, the international recognition given to the Pasig River through the PRC in 2 consecutive years. In September of 2017, the Pasig River was adjudged runner-up or second place next to San Antonio, Texas of USA in the 20th International River Symposium in the city of Brisbane, Australia. And again, last month, October 16, for the second time, the Pasig River won the inaugural Asia River Prize Award in the first ever 21st International River Symposium held in Sydney, Australia, besting the Yangtze River of the Republic of China, represented by the Asian Development Bank. On final note, the PRRC is a testament that collaboration with other agencies or LGUs helping each other plays a great role in the success of the rehabilitation and development programs, which we believe that this global conference in building sustainable blue economy will serve as an avenue for the whole world to converge in one purpose, to achieve sustainable development without sacrificing our environment, especially our waters, where life is coming from. Let us save our planet, save the dream for our children and generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all three speakers. What really struck me here is the diversity of experience and perspectives that you guys bring to how to deal with waste and circular economies, which is about how do we take waste and reuse it for economic gain and to really sustain and grow our blue economies. The expertise we have here ranges from an MBA, so a business degree, to a network engineer and governance experience. So we have a really strong expert panel to field questions. And I'd like to open up to the audience to ask any questions or make comments you have about how these really incredible innovations might help grow our blue economies and sustain our ocean and water spaces for humanity. We have people walking around with microphones, so kindly raise your hand if you have a question and we'll address them to the panelists. So I see we have a question here in the front.
Thank you very much. My name is Anyang Nyong'o, Governor of Kisumu County. I wanted to ask a question to my friend from Ghana. You proposed that with regard to plastic waste, that we should try and get an attitude change rather than ban plastic bags and plastic bottles and so on. My problem is that it is, my proposal would be, rather than go the long way of relying on attitude change, we could still ban the use of plastic bags and plastic bottles and give another industry an opportunity to fill the gap that is left by these plastic bags and plastic bottles. For example, the paper industry, making paper bags, paper cups, using paper to do a lot of things. There's also another technology from India where you can use vegetables or vegetable waste to make bags which look like plastic bags, but they are biodegradable, which again will create jobs and create the use of what could be waste to make a product that replaces plastic bags. Wouldn't that not be better than go the difficult way of attitude change? And you know how difficult it is to change the attitude of our people. Thank you.
If I may hear you right, you were asking why should we not use the paper bags instead of plastics? I cannot hear you clearly.
What I'm saying is that your proposal was that we should not ban plastic bags.
Yes.
We should use them, not plastic bottles. Rather, we should teach our people to dispose of them better. My proposal is that's rather difficult, and it's a long process. The best thing to ban them, but replace them by using bags from paper raw material from paper.
Okay,
There's also a use.
纸，在降解方面的话，纸会更好一些。而且用纸袋子来取消塑料袋， 会能创造更多就业。这是我的意见。我们不要忘记，这个纸袋子对环境也会有影响。如果你用纸袋子来取代塑料袋，你其实什么也没做。如果你的态度不转变，还是想要放，那
So banning plastics.
Non, bannir les plastiques ne résout pas le problème. Nous devons voir comment...
Ban the plastics, more jobs are going to be lost than the people you are talking about. Because there are a lot of big companies that uses plastics as their packaging material. And you can imagine the number of unemployment we will have. And one of the SDG goals is reduce unemployment. We shouldn't forget that. Paper bag is okay, but banning the plastics completely to replace it with paper bag doesn't solve the problem. We need to change our attitude of disposal. That is the best thing we need to do.
Thank you. So please, Mr. Woodring.
Is this work? Yeah. If I could just add into that, it's important to remember that plastic bags are not the only cause of the problem of plastic pollution, nor are bottles. And I believe your technology can handle all types of plastic. It's virtually impossible for us to get rid of all types of plastic. So though one ban might attract and be targeted at one material type, there are still going to be a huge need for plastics, for food packaging, and other materials that is going to be very hard to get away from. So the point is maybe reducing that material, but for what is remaining, we have to find new channels of disposal and reuse and value creation for that material. And that's where the Plastic Disclosure Project can help us think about the materials that we still need to use in our daily life.
Thanks. I see we have another question in the front, and our time is running short, so maybe we'll have just one question, and then we'll wrap up with some final comments from our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Miles Sampa, the mayor of the city of Lusaka in Zambia. My question is to my colleague from Ghana. Good innovation for that product, the paving stones from plastic. My question is it economically viable? How much does it cost in the processing? Is it worth the while? Don't we have a situation where you're spending, say, $10,000 US for 1,000 worth of those paving? And if so, what's the capex? And where can I get the machines? Do you have them in Ghana, or we need to import them from China, for instance? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The product is 30% cheaper than the normal concrete materials that we have. You don't need to import from China. Africa, Ghana, we can do it. I built the machine myself. I didn't import it from China. I built it from old scrap metal by myself. And because I have worked in the plastic industry at the age of 13, I have much experience in recycling machines. The product is very cheap and durable, and it's for a lifetime. So you have no problem with that.
So in our last couple minutes, I want to make sure that we give an opportunity for each of our speakers maybe to leave a take-home message for county leaders, for city leaders, for the people of all the countries in the world that are represented here on, from your work and your experience, what would you recommend at this county and city leadership level? So maybe we can start with Mr. Goodring and we end with Mr. Goitia.
Well, I would remind everyone that if we look at ourselves like we have done with carbon and water and look at waste, which has really been forgotten in the last few decades, is not often a high priority unless it's just looked at for health reasons of not having waste in our streets. But if we flip the coin and say, all of this material is completely usable for new resources, and someone mentioned it this morning for resource recovery. If we inspect our flows and our accumulations of waste and segregate, understand the way that we take care of them and capture them for much better value creation, we will not have the waste going to the rivers at all or to the creeks. And so in the meantime, using something like our Global Alert app to have people report where those hotspots are and put up booms and nets can drive community thinking on how the water can be protected. They can then see that they trust your leadership, that you've done the right thing, and you can then have more power to carry on the message for the next bigger discussions, which might require a little bit more money or a little bit more engagement from the community. And those two introspective looks, in the end, will help the ocean a lot, because there will not be materials going out of our rivers into the sea.
Great, thanks so much. So, Mr. Goitia, maybe we can just end with you. Mr. Goitia has told me he's known as Pep, so I'll just say, Pep, can you give us the last word?
Okay. For our governors and mayors, urbanization greatly contributes to the deterioration of our waterways. Developmental policies of every local government units sometimes result in conflict in terms of urban development. Harmonizing these policies as one of the core mandates will possess a challenge, as local government leaders are also mandated to develop their areas. However, our responsibility to make sure that compliant development is being implemented and convincing these leaders to the importance of healthy waterways will make our jobs all easier. One of the criteria in determining the success or attributes of strong leadership will be strong political will. We unite both the public and private sectors into the shared mission of protecting our waterways and improving the lives of the communities around with sheer strong political will, but I believe you have. Our combined efforts, or your combined efforts, including quality projects, programs, activities, and advocacies in riverbanks development, wastewater management, and waste management, and public awareness will definitely help everyone a lot.
Thank you so much. I've heard some really strong messages here. I think we've heard about the need for very strong leadership, and also for really thinking about our attitudes and thinking not just about bans, which are a good step but not always 100% feasible, and really thinking about how can we take waste and make it useful. And we heard that about plastics, but also about some innovations with invasive species that are clogging our waterways. So thank you very much to our panelists for providing your experience from multiple parts of the world. And with that, we'll close this session. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. O'Leary and the distinguished panelists. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our next video highlights the theme Climate Action, Agriculture, Waste Management, and Pollution-Free Oceans. Enjoy. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the next panelist will discuss cities and climate. They are Mr. Pavin Sukhdev, President, Worldwide Fund International, Dr. Angus Friday, Co-Chair, Blue Innovation Institute, and Advisor to the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator Grenada, and Cyril Siawe, Head, Kenya County Program. I wish to welcome back on stage Dr. Jennifer O'Leary to moderate this segment. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, distinguished guests. Because of time, I think we'll launch straight into our panel. And so if we could please start with our first speaker, the Honorable Head of WWF. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, an interesting and very urgent topic, cities and climate change. We live in an urban age. 55% of us live in cities. This number is going to grow up to 75% by 2050. Cities are the engines of economic growth. They deliver an estimated 80–85% of GDP. They also use 75% of resources. You saw some of the impacts of that in the example from the Philippines on the Pasig River. They also therefore generate half the waste and about 60–80% of climate emissions. But being the heart of creativity and innovation as well as growth, I think provides the opportunity, because this is where change can happen. Cities are who can drive change. And most of these cities are actually coastal cities. So in terms of number, more than 70%. In terms of area, more than 90% of the urban area is basically coastal area. And change is in the hands of the cities. Today, we are seeing a whole range of policies, whether it comes to mobility systems, introducing cycling and easier access and better control, even designing cities in a way that there is more access and you don't need mobility, which means that your place of work and your place of home and your children's school and hospital are in the same neighborhood. And looking at infrastructure and seeing how that can be done in a less environmentally damaging way, a more climate-friendly way. Encouraging local businesses of the kind, indeed, that we saw on the last panel, reconverting waste into useful product for paving city roads. Changing municipal taxation. Delivering the right messages as to how you handle waste, how you handle emissions, what kind of energy you buy, whether it is electricity from hydropower or whether it's electricity from coal-fired power, and providing local jobs in the new economy. All of these have an impact on climate. And I think this is where actually city governments, the power of cities and the power of mayors and mayoral administrations to influence change is absolutely paramount. We at the WWF are doing our bit. We are partners and we are scoping activities in China, Hong Kong, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand and Vietnam to pilot a number of innovative and entrepreneurial solutions for plastic pollution-free cities in Asia. And we are also partnering with numerous organizations internationally to be able to help them with what we call the design for one planet cities, essentially cities built on the assumption that their emissions must not exceed the carrying capacity of this planet. So a lot to do, but also a lot of opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite our next panelist on cities and climate change, Dr. Angus Friday from the Blue Innovation Institute.
Thank you very much, Dr. O'Leary. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do is just give you a whistle-stop tour of a journey that we've had in Grenada, moving from climate disaster through to a Blue Growth Master Plan, and finally to developing the idea of the Caribbean's first climate-smart capital city. Many of you would have heard the recent report of the IPCC. If I can paraphrase, basically we have 12 years to get it right and to keep global temperature warming under 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So this creates a whole new sense of urgency. And this became apparent to us in Grenada as far back as 2004, when we were hit by 2 successive hurricanes. Now, Grenada is considered to be below the hurricane belt. 2004, 2005, we had 2 successive hurricanes, which basically decimated the economy. We lost 70% of our agriculture, 90% of our homes, damages worth 200% of GDP. Following 2004, we did everything to build back better. But of course, with the 2008 financial crisis, we found ourselves in a situation in 2013 with 40% unemployment and unable to meet the country's debts. We're not going to do the slides, by the way. There's 30 slides, not enough time. We therefore had to look to see how could we grow the economy? How could we get investment into Grenada? How could we actually create and stimulate jobs? A lot of work was being done at the time on blue growth and the blue economy, and we looked at Grenada's situation. We had an EEZ that is 75 times higher, 75 times larger than our landmass. So it made sense for us to look at the possibilities for blue growth. We conducted an entire analysis of the coastline, and we came up with 9 clusters from the north of our archipelagic state right down to the south. And this covered 8 of the blue economy, sectors. What we did from there was to focus in and to hone in on our capital city. Our capital city is one which has undergone tremendous urban growth, urban sprawl. The heart of the capital city itself, which we call the Carénage, is subject to inundation from storm surge, as we found. And therefore, we needed a new plan to deal with these things and to do it in a way which could actually encourage jobs and growth at the same time. So we were very fortunate to be able to work with the Green Climate Fund and with New York University to develop a project called the Caribbean's First Climate Smart City. And this project has 9 critical areas of activity. And it includes things like reducing the level of traffic and congestion. It involves urban transportation, urban densification, dealing with sea level rise, sewage, waste, all of these matters. Because Grenada is a country that is looking at how to boost its economic potential, we also recognize that international education is a key part of our economy. Grenada produces 1 in every 100 doctors practicing in the United States. It's basically responsible for 20% of our GDP. So we decided that we wanted our climate smart city to become a living university, building on the successes that we've had with St. George's University. And therefore, we've come up with the idea of building on something called the Blue Innovation Institute, which I represent, to have what is now called the Center for Climate and Oceans, or the Climate and Oceans Center, or CLOC. This project will cover and incorporate all the aspects of the Blue Innovation Institute, aquaculture, plastics that we've just been hearing about, corals, etc., but also will be a living institution for climate change, for renewables through to adaptation. So we're delighted to be working with partners like NYU and with the Green Climate Fund. We also want to say special thanks to the Dutch government, to the IDB, to the World Bank, and to many other partners, the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator, and of course the OECS, who are doing a tremendous amount of work on marine spatial planning. What we've done is a start, and we look forward to working with a whole range of partners to create what we call the Caribbean's first climate smart city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final panelist for the session on cities and climate change is Mr. Cyril Siaway. He's the head of the country program for the United Nations Environmental Program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, Waziris. For us, climate change and cities call mainly for 3 main reflections. The first one is citizen and city, how citizens are normally supposed to take their own say and contribute to the decision that governors have been conveyed here and mayor, or to make a tremendous and important decision to lead the country towards the whole 21st centuries and beyond. Just 2 examples. The way, and we were all called this morning by many leaders on the way we consume and the way we treat waste, and recently we just discussed about plastics with a very interesting engagement with governors. So the way we generate waste is extremely important. But
what is happening and what we should encourage to happen. Why? Because of the Paris Agreement, and I will come back very quickly on that, is to encourage mayors, governors, to think about the way we treated waste. And something wonderful is happening in Kenya. I will take the example of Kisumu. They have just killed, for example, a dumping site that has been there for years. And the same is happening also in Mombasa. For those who have visited Mombasa, you just know that before you arrive in the city, you used to have this huge dump site to the sea. That's the first thing. How can the citizen be instrumental in fostering climate change, positive climate change action? Second point is policy. UN Environment is working tremendously with countries, with citizens, engaging other actors, and especially non-civil, non-state actors, as mentioned under the Chapter 5 of the Paris Agreement, to have their say instead of how are they organized themselves to really empower the civil society to also have their say in managing and making sure that the 1.5 degree will be under that target. And hence, in Africa, actually, we are heading towards that 1.5. And if nothing is not done in a very aggressive way, unfortunately, we might be beyond the 1.5. But the good hope and the good news is that during the COP22 in Morocco, in Marrakesh, 18 countries, 18 mayors in Africa, they come together and they have lobbied and succeed to sign an agreement to have a capital, a county's market, carbon market bound. This is already been implemented, and we can see now, if you look at the Nigeria Stock Exchange, that more than $600 million is already being generated through the market. Nigeria is actually currently having a good exchange of experiences with, for example, Kenya, where development countries, where development partners are fostering these green bonds. And this is also a call that we are putting on the table, that we are throwing on the mayors and governors here to take advantages of this type of tool to greening the processes, to greening all the activity that they are doing. And this is one of the things that UN Environment is now fostering. The third one, how can we, as most of the city are now, thinking of putting in place a sustainable way of managing waste. Waste is a global issue, not only in developing countries, but in this country here has become a priority. And with the new devolution, that push the responsibility towards countries and make governors and mayors being the first responsible of managing the waste, of the quality of environment mostly, and connecting to the blue economy. Most of the cases, most of the waste would end in the seas. So what is being happening here is how can, as they're thinking on a sustainable way of managing waste, how can development partners chip in this conversation? And this is also something that, this is also an area where the United Nations Development Program is fostering, is nurturing, is pushing with governors being headquartered here, and also with mayor and the civil society. And my last point is how can the global citizen, through other partners, like the Council of Governors, for example, like the Youth Association, like NGOs, seal a good deal to make sure that waste is not as generated in the same quantity as what it used to be, and lastly, how waste can be transformed into more sustainable other materials like energy, like other raw materials that get into what we are calling now inclusiveness and circular economy. And this is not the area where the platform being called through this Blue Economy Conference also offer to have this type of conversation.
Thank you so much. I think we've heard three very diverse perspectives on how cities can innovate for climate. And because of time, we're going to close the session, but I invite you all to please speak with our three respected guests during the break. And with that, we'll move on to the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. O'Leary and the distinguished panelists. Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, our next panel discussion will address energy and lighting the cities and towns of the future. The panelists are Gabriel Negatu, Director General, East African Development Bank, Dr. Robert Ochola, Director and Global Head of Strategy and Innovation, African Export-Import Bank. Thank you and welcome. Will be moderated by Dr. Juan Valdi Robles.
Hi, and thank you. I'm sorry for the delay with the timing session. Let me introduce Mr. Gabriel Negatu, Director General for East Africa at Africa Development Bank. The regional hub is part of the bank of a new strategy to proceed a business and development impact across the continent. And Mr. Gabriel is going to make a quite interesting presentation. Please.
Thank you, moderator, and good morning, good afternoon. We've been asked to talk about the energy challenge in African cities, and there's a PowerPoint presentation, but
sorry, could you, the technical team, put the presentation at the screen? Thank you.
Yeah, in the interest of time, while they put this up, let's just go through the thing very quickly. I think that there's some interesting statistics that we need to look at. You know, on average, cities take up less than 10% of the national landmass of our countries, but they consume 2/3 of the total energy resources and budget. So they cover 10% of the landmass and consume 2/3 of the energy resources in the country. And at the current rate of migration, it's estimated that 60% of the total population in this continent will be living in cities by the year 2030. That's less than 15 years from now. So you can imagine the swelling that cities are going to experience. And of course, this leads to rapid depletion of resources and massive wastes of resource, mostly in the form of carbons, heavy fuel, and so on. So non-renewable energy. And this is something that concerns us, that should concern all of us. And I'm happy to see some governors around the room. Your cities, these are the cities of the future. It's Kisumu, Kilifi, wherever it is. These are the cities of the future, and the energy challenge there is very much where we're going to be facing the thing. So what is it that we can do very quickly? So one of the first steps we need to take is deploy technology. Technology is going to be what's going to save us. Competing demand for water, energy, and so on. So therefore, technology will be a key enabler to address the thing. The second, which is perhaps even more within your power, is the passing of legislation to promote development of intelligent and smart solutions, smart energy, smart incentives, smart meters, smart transmission lines that reduce transmission loss, that reduce other forms of losses, and that preserve the limited energy that we have. The other is to modernize the city lighting infrastructure towards renewable energy, towards addressing insecurity in city productivity, towards reducing the cost of financing energy through PPP structures. Nowadays, there are companies that are willing to come in, build a structure, operate it for 15, 20, 25 years. That does not require upfront capital outlay from your counties and from your cities. So I think this is another way to do it. Promote a culture of reusable products. We are used to the culture of use and throw away, but this is not sustainable. So we need to promote a culture of reusable products, enforce quality standards in the appliances we use, in the electricity, in the light bulbs that we use. so that we all move collectively towards energy efficient resources. And just by way of wrapping up, let me just point to a few things that the African Development Bank can do to support. This is the last slide. We can effectively partner with cities and counties to mobilize resources for modernizing and expanding the city infrastructure. We're doing it in several cities where we are upgrading the distribution systems so that systems that leak are replaced with modern, smart systems. We can provide technical assistance and knowledge services to address the knowledge gap for the optimal use of natural resources, and assist in transaction design and deal making so that you can finance optimally the maintenance and the operation of your lighting and energy system. Work with government and the private sector to invest in waste management. Every one of your cities has massive waste. We are ready to work with your counties, cities, to develop a transaction model that allows you to get optimal benefit while also burning your things, your waste. And then lastly, we're ready to work with you to develop new financing products and instruments that are innovative and that will allow you, again, to use public and private resources more effectively. So let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Negatu. It's quite interesting about the financial mechanism and about the new technology. Let's continue moving forward with Dr. Robert Ochoa. He's Director of Strategy and Innovation at Africa Export-Import Bank with a background and expertise over 10 years on strategy development and innovation, art, telco, and banking across Africa.
Yeah, thank you. I want to take a different approach. Allow me to stand just to create some energy in the room. It's a pleasure to be here. I was going to take you through a short presentation. The first slide of my presentation was going to show you that hopefully in the next 3 or 4 minutes, while I give my presentation, and you've seen the data, we'll have 800 new people, net people on the globe. And that shows you how very fast the world population is growing. I don't have the slides up. But nevertheless, what does that mean? If I go to the next slide. Yeah, so I was showing you, rapid growth in population. If I go to the next slide, the implications. The implication, of course, globally, is that the energy, and you've heard that, usage continues to expand. Over the next, actually 40 to 60 years, the amount of energy in emerging markets, Africa, especially Asia as well, is set to grow significantly. And of course, with that will come high amounts of greenhouse gases impacting, the climate issues. And that's the reason why we're here. If I move to the next slide, I want to jump from this, and I want to just give you this information about the middle class in Africa. And I think you see this data. 42% of the population, which is about 1.1 billion people, will be in the middle class, according to some of the data. And if you look at the next slide, what it does tell you is that, and this number is, I take it equivalent to GDP, that Africa's GDP in probably 2015 was around 1.4 billion. It hovers between 1.1 to 1.4 billion. The trend over the next 10 years, growth, we've reduced the growth to sort of assume, instead of growing at 5%, we'll be growing at about 3.3%. And therefore, Africa's total GDP will grow to 2.1 trillion. And that's based on private consumption. So this works only, of course, in emerging and developing markets. And what does this mean in terms of, if I go to the next slide, what does this mean in terms of usage? This means that as you look to the future, you need to really think differently about how we plan our cities. Because with this growth, emerging cities need to be constructed differently. So the first thing I want to show you, and when I was given the brief for this presentation, I was told, can I take a journey to show you exactly how things are changing in terms of modern use of technology. So today, there's a company out of Germany that has actually been able to take hydrogen So it takes information, it'll take biogas, it'll take solar energy, it'll take wind energy, and actually collate this into liquid hydrogen. So for the first time, you're actually able to take green energy and put it into a liquid form and move that. Now, that has major implications. If you think about it today, if you have a place with high amounts of sun, you need to generally be there, collect it onto a grid, and then pump it into your system through a battery. Now, with this technology, what this enables you to do is actually move that energy from where it's sitting, be it wind energy produced through the ocean. When you look on the Gong Hills, you have our wind farms there. If you look at the solar panels that we have, you might need to put them in a place where you have high levels of solar energy, but then consolidate that into liquid format, and actually just like you would, if I move to the next slide, if you would with oil today, you can use various methodologies to actually transport your hydrogen. And when you get it to the place where you are, you convert it back into energy, into electricity. So this is very, very dynamic, and this exists today. And again, these are some of the things that when we are thinking about it, and as I close my presentation, you'll see that. If I move to the next slide very quickly, the top right there shows you wind farms a solar farm in London. This is an example of a smart city in Tokyo, where they've been able to use solar panels, and what they're looking at, and I think this is the key point for me, is the centralized distribution systems, where you're actually moving away from global systems into centralized and localized. And this has serious implications, if I go to the next slide, on how you actually can move today. So this is an example, I'll jump through this. This is really an example of a city that is being done in Copenhagen. But this is really where I want to get to, because what you're able to do today with energy is use things that are happening in the digital space and things that are happening in the energy space and fuse these together. So imagine a world, and if you're using Internet of Things, where your fridge will order for you food, but when you're away from the house and you have very little things in your fridge, it actually reduces the power consumption. And any extra power consumption you have can then be sold into the digital grid, and you become not just a consumer, but what we're calling prosumers. So that is really some of the shifts that are taking place. In terms of buildings, I think you've seen this before, where you can use your building as a methodology to collect power. Apps where you as a user can actually now control your energy usage. So you say, listen, I want to spend 2 shillings worth of energy today, therefore I'm not going to wash my clothes, I need to only do some ironing, for example. So that's the level of granularity, because you would have set up big data to actually collect data for you. And then this, of course, gets fed back into a natural loop where people who are doing the design, people who are collecting data, people who are actually involved in energy design, you yourself can actually be part of that big data system. So as I finalize with my last slide, I believe that the new world is moving just like you did from mobility, where you moved into digitization. You're seeing that happening in the financial sector, and you will now see that happening also in the energy sector. So that is quite critical. But the regulatory system has to be conducive. I leave you with a final, very broad thought, which is something that we are thinking about in terms of how do you actually finance this. So people have been very negative about Bitcoin, but I think part of the reason they've been negative about Bitcoin is that the underlying asset has not been something that you can value. So some of the ideas that people are playing around with is to actually take a Bitcoin and make sure the underlying asset is a power grid, which you can actually have a cost for. So you can raise money through some of these innovative manners. And of course, using blockchain to ensure that you can serve the consumer correctly. So I wanted to just share those thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Robert Ochoa. We have the time very, very restricted, but we have time for 1 or 2 questions or final comments. Okay. Yes, please.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Chigonya Elias from Uganda, Allied Development Agency. My question was in the last, especially how we can use the blockchain as a new technology in serving the needs of the community. I don't know, because the blockchain is an upcoming technology that most of the developing country societies have not learned how best they can be used. Could you enlighten us more on that? Thank you.
Yeah, let me give you, and I didn't have enough time for this presentation, but in essence, it's a distributed ledger. So if you assume that out of moving away from, so today in Kenya we have one supplier for electricity, and if tomorrow you had 30 million people who are providing electricity, you need to know who has paid for it, how much, and therefore you use blockchain as a distributed ledger to keep track of how many kilowatts have been delivered to customer X, and this is something that sits in a system where every single person on the blockchain would have visibility of. So it really is around ensuring that your ledger is, first of all, 100% immutable, and there's trust built in the system. So this is really, when you move away from your present form of distribution of power today to moving into a consumer-centric model, then you then need to have a system that everybody trusts. So this is saying that if this is the way we move, this is the direction that you'd need to take.
Good morning, how are you? Yes. Yes. Now, as we are talking about the blue economy, green economy, we are talking about economics as a whole. And we are aware that the shared economy is on our way here. And now we are trying to think of how you're going to integrate the new infrastructure with the blue economy and how it's going to be of benefit to the future of the country and the world as a whole. Now, are we considering that AI is also coming into the picture here? And what is the stake of work and employment and availability of opportunities for the youth who are actually coming up with this blue economy, green economy, shared economy?
Thank you. From what I heard, I think you're asking what is the future of the blue economy and the future of work and the youth and so on. Look, the blue economy, blue is not just a color. Blue is not just a color, it's a sector also. There's an entire economic resource, a blue resource, which is the water, the ocean, the seas that surround us. And how do you build an economy around that? Now, there is ample economic opportunities both for the youth and non-youth in that sector, but it needs to be harnessed effectively. And Kenya is a very good example. Kenya has many water bodies, and yet the blue economy is not as developed as it should be, or is not where it was in the 1960s. Kenya has gone back, so this new effort now that you see pushing the fishing industry and blue economic activities is one of the ways that you're going to see the youth and non-youth actively engage in the future of work. But equally important is that the future of work is also changing. It's not going to be the traditional work, so I think those are the two spaces you need to watch going forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel Negatu and Dr. Robert Ochoa. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for your knowledge. I invite all of you to approach after this panel discussion to continue the discussion with both of him. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, governors, senators, members of parliament, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as we enjoy these refreshing exchanges of views on rethinking our cities, we encourage our moderators and panelists to be succinct because we have a rich, full program that we have to go through. Thank you. And now the next panel of discussion is on the special case for coastal cities. And the panelists are Dr. Will McClintock, Spatial Planning, Mr. Bernard Wagner, Mayor, Belize City, Governor Emerson Jaffa Kingi, Governor of Kilifi County. Thank you and welcome.
Hi, thank you. Let me introduce Dr. Will McClinton. He's a marine scientific at the University of California and marine spatial planner. He has worked as planner in nearly 20 countries, facilitating dialogue between ocean stakeholders. He is also a senior fellow at National Center for Ecological Analysis Synthesis. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a delight to be here in Nairobi and to be sharing the stage with my distinguished guests. Congratulations to the organizers for putting together an excellent conference on an important topic. I'd like to begin with my slides, if I may. I'm going to be speaking to you about marine spatial planning. Next slide, please. And maybe I'll start off by just pointing out the obvious, that the oceans are crowded. They are busy with human activity. And this map shows human activities in the ocean near where I live in California, where we have commercial and recreational fishing, aquaculture, shipping, ports, tourism activities. We have marine protected areas where research occurs and which support tourism. Lots of things going on in the ocean, and importantly, all of these activities are overlapping in space, so they're potentially conflicting with each other. And importantly, because these activities are on the rise, the cumulative effects or impacts of these activities on marine ecosystems are also on the rise. Next slide, please. So marine spatial planning is simply a process that is intended to address these issues by bringing together all of the various ocean stakeholders to collaboratively develop a marine spatial plan, a plan for ocean zones. And these zones are intended to support sustainable use of ocean resources, which then of course support the blue economy, and reduce conflict between ocean users and protect ocean ecosystems. It's somewhat of a technical process in that we use digital maps to visualize the distribution of resources and activities, and we use computer decision support tools to draw and evaluate prospective zones. We used to think that this was really the domain of technical experts, people with special knowledge of computers and ocean science. But now we know that that's not the case, especially with the development of new mapping technologies over the last 10 and 15 years. We can engage practically anybody, regardless of their educational or cultural background or their avocation or vocation, in the design of science and policy-based ocean zones. Next slide, please. So marine spatial planning is a well-developed approach as the sort of tip of the spear to a healthy and thriving blue economy. And guides like this one can help you understand the steps to doing marine spatial planning properly, including stakeholder engagement. What I really want to emphasize and leave you with is this notion that we really need to ensure proper time and funding to document stakeholder engagement. Because in the end, what we really want to do is develop ocean zoning plans that reflect the needs and values of our stakeholders. So we want to know who developed these plans, what data did they use, and therefore, can we ensure that these plans will have broad support, buy-in, and therefore compliance. So that's what I want to leave with. Thank you very much. Asante sana.
Thank you, Dr. Will. I would like to remark that the need to collaborate between urban planning and marine spatial planning. So I think it's quite interesting your point of view about this topic. Let me introduce Mr. Bernard Warner, the mayor of Belize City, with great challenges from waterfront and master plan.
Thank you again, and
Good afternoon. To contribute to the discussion, I want to drive home the point of coastal cities and the challenges we face. I will deal with it through the lens of Belize City. Coastal cities such as Belize City are confronted daily with the triple threats of climate change, rapid urbanization, and globalization. Belize City is the largest urban center with a population of approximately 67,000, or 18% of the total population of Belize. It is also a home to our nation's premier financial, political, judicial, health, and educational institutions. However, like most coastal cities, when pre-existing urban development conditions of poverty, high crime and violence, unsung and deteriorating building stock and infrastructure, insecure land tenure, and efficient urban sprawl, when these converge with the triple threats, the prognosis for a sustainable and resilient city becomes even more troubling. Coastal cities are therefore duty-bound to consider the human impact and threats of coastal urban populations, including Belize City, particularly those that contribute to unsustainable urban land development and fishing practices, elevated nutrients and chemical contaminants from marine traffic, sewage, outflows, and agricultural runoff, which decreases water quality, impacting marine life and fueling algal blooms. This obviously has the potential to destroy the value and benefits of the blue economy, and more importantly for Belize, the livelihoods of more than 190,000 Belizeans who live in Belize coastal and island communities, and who earn their livelihoods from tourism, and notwithstanding the other 15,000 Belizeans who are directly dependent on Belize's fisheries for their livelihoods. Reports show that tourism, fishing, and shoreline protection alone contribute more than $1 billion every year to Belize's economy. Imagine if we can unleash its full potential, including its landscape connectivity, which is where we are primarily exploring strategic options. Belize is ranked 8th of 167 countries by the World Bank for climate risks. And Belize City, with its low elevation and being a city on water that is comprised of islands created by the Halover Creek passing through it, and the transect of several man-made and natural canals and ecological corridors, and bounded by the Caribbean Sea into which the creek flows, will be hit the hardest by the triple threat. We are therefore committed to ensuring the health and integrity of our seas, rivers, and coastal ecosystems and canals for harnessing of the traditional and emerging benefits of the blue economy. Our strategies for doing so are anchored in collaboration, partnership, coordination, inclusion of the most vulnerable populations, cognizance that resilience and sustainability is layered into every part of municipal and community governance, and that it must focus on the conditions of vulnerabilities that can be caused by failures of infrastructure or ecosystems, by policy, cultural or governance constraints, or by limited human capacities in working at the local level, informed by local needs and capacities, and in innovative social and economic development intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And let's continue with our final speakers, governors, and Maso Jeffa, the Kilifi County. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I've been asked to make a special case for coastal cities in as far as blue economy is concerned, and also touch on the emerging opportunities for coastal cities. I think history will tell us that humankind deliberately decided to settle on coastal cities world over. And they did this for a reason, because of the main opportunities that come with coastal cities. However, with time, inland cities started mushrooming across the world. And many governments then decided to forget the opportunities and the potential that come with coastal cities. And today, I think we are seeing, or we are paying the price for not investing more in coastal cities as far as blue economy is concerned. Out of the 23 mega cities in the world, I think 16 of them are actually coastal cities, for one good reason, because of the main opportunities that come with coastal cities. When you're talking about blue economy, we can only talk about coastal cities, because certainly you cannot discuss blue economy in inland cities. And therefore, I don't think I need to make a special case for coastal cities as far as blue economy is concerned. It is the only case to handle here, because if we are, as a world, going to reap the most out of the coastal cities, out of blue economy, then we must embrace the coastal cities. Now, if you look at the emerging opportunities, which I tend to disagree, I don't want to call them emerging opportunities, because these opportunities have been with us long before. If you look at fisheries, fisheries cannot be said to be an emerging opportunity. If you look at marine transport, it cannot be deemed as an emerging opportunity. If you look at the exploration of oil and gas offshore, it is not an emerging opportunity. These opportunities have been with us before. It's only that as governments, we have not been on the forefront. We have not taken full advantage of the opportunities that blue economy poses to our economy. We decided then to go inland and embrace more agriculture and other related non-blue economy opportunities. I think time has come for all governments world over to embrace blue economy. For the governments that embrace blue economy early enough, I think they're reaping the most. If you look at Singapore, for example, they don't do anything other than blue economy. And we can see how the country has moved. We can see the kind of economic growth that blue economy has given to that particular country. And therefore, I believe through this kind of conferences, governments will be able to reawaken, governments will be able to actually start a journey in giving special consideration to coastal cities and put them on the driving seat as far as blue economy is concerned. Otherwise, if we are going to rely heavily on inland-driven economy, then, as we speak today, the kind of pressure that is being put on the other economy, that is no blue economy, I think we have reached a saturation point where we need to diversify. And the only frontier, the only next frontier that can be able to substitute the kind of pressure that we have put in the other sectors of our economy is all of us to turn blue. And the only driver, the only leader who can make sure that we reap the most is the coastal cities of the world.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have time for one or two questions. I would like also to yes.
Thank you very much. I am from Mauritius, working for the IOC and SWA-UFC organization, implementing a regional World Bank project, the first Southwest Indian Ocean Fisheries Governance and Shared Growth Project. I would like, most of the presentation that I've gone through, they are of high pertinence, they are of high relevance. There seems to be, how should I content myself? Without this, you don't move forward. Okay. I have nothing against the maritime spatial planning, But I want the interveners, most of the interveners in various sessions, they have not addressed one fundamental issue. We all know that a particular region must be devoted to the fishermen community, to the tourism community, to the shipping lane community, and to the other stakeholders. And the more we approach the blue economy fundamental, the more you see it is high-tech, high investment, high capital. And at the end of the day, what works in the US does not necessarily work in Africa. I want you to get this quite clear. It's a fundamental approach. What works in Europe is not necessarily working in Africa. You have to understand, I take my own country, we are a tourist destination, and we know how difficult it is to develop aquaculture in my country. Despite the fact that for food security issues, for the export potential, it is an avenue of growth. But the fishermen community, they are not easy people. Those who have been on the ground, they will not surrender. I think what you should address is that, what do we do with those people who will be unemployed at the end of the day? Good, you're building cities, you're trying to say, well, this is the blue economy growth potential. You are doing things in a region of the world where unemployment and food security issues are at stake. There are prime problems here. I think you have to address this. I don't say that what you're professing is not good. This is the unique world. It's the fee. It's like this. It's a dream world. If ever we implement what you want to do, it can be done. But in that region where I am, I don't think it is practicable. I want you to comment on that. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. I agree that these methods have been developed and tried in a variety of cultural contexts, which may or may not be applicable to your specific case. So your point is well taken.
Thank you so much. We don't have more time.
Hello?
Let me thank our speakers, Dr. Whit McClinton, thank you, Mr. Bernard Wagner, Mayor of Belize City, and Governor Mason. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished panelists and moderator Dr. Juan Varji Robles, urban planning consultant in Indonesia. The next panel of discussion is on challenges in harnessing blue economy opportunities. This segment will be moderated by Anastasia Raditya Lezaik. Ms. Lezaik is Research Assistant at Institute for Development and International Relations in Zagreb, Croatia. She is an alumni and member of the Academy of Political Development, Croatia. The panelists are Ms. Leila Ben Hassan, Founder and Chief Executive Officer of ABEP, Dr. Manuel Barange, Director Fisheries and Aquaculture, and Juliette Biao, United Nations Environmental Program Regional Director for Africa. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, and welcome to the session of Challenges in Harnessing Blue Economy Opportunities. We're running behind schedule, so this session will last only approximately for 15 minutes. And the speakers were introduced already, so I will give the floor first to Dr. Biao Kodenopu from the United Nations Environmental Program, and each speaker will have around 3 minutes to speak. Yeah, because we're really running out of time, so we can have some session for questions and answers later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, distinguished heads of delegates. Thank you for coming. We are welcoming you to this side event. I think I will build on what the Executive Director of UN Habitat said this morning, which is really to consider harnessing the potential for blue economy through a holistic and ecosystem approach. I think this is the reason because oceans, lakes, rivers really provide a diverse of ecosystem services. One is provisioning services. The other one is recreation service. They also provide a regulatory service by regulating the climate, and oceans are also a carbon sink. I think instead of really looking environment as a challenge, I think it's present a great opportunity. Great opportunities for government. As I refer to one of the decision of the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, when they call upon all African countries to value the natural capital
for the most part dry, so there are lucrative investment opportunities for investment in the water sector, but also within the region, which generally tend to be dry. We are also encouraging investment in the energy sector, which we are currently transforming because it was previously predominated by government, so we are opening it up for private sector investors. And in order to give the peace of mind to the investors, we guarantee the rights of investors to properties and their investments through a Bill of Rights that is entrenched in our Constitution and can only be amended to enhance it and not to water it down. So if you invest in Namibia, you would not have any apprehensions about the state confiscating your assets for any reason whatsoever. So if we are interested to buy your assets, we have to compensate you fairly according to the Constitution. And we have autonomous courts where the courts very often make awards against the government. And when that happens, we uphold the decisions of the courts. So you have corporate good governance there in Namibia. We also have an Investment Protection Act, which guarantees, amongst others, also the right to repatriate profits, subject, of course, to you looking at further investment opportunities in the country to promote the growth of the economy. We have lucrative tax incentives, which includes deductions, a range of very lucrative and generous deductions that will reduce the corporate tax that is paid to actually half. And we have also a special zone where we have a tax haven. You don't have to pay anything if you invest to produce goods exclusively for export. We provide subsidies for training because we know that we are a young country where we are struggling with skills. So to the extent that you invest in the training of your employees, you get tax deductions for that. And we have invested a lot of efforts to ensure that we are able to resolve our labor disputes in an amicable manner. We have committed ourselves to streamline government processes so that we reduce bureaucracies. We have anti-corruption laws and an independent anti-corruption body, so you don't have to be worried about putting something or passing a brown envelope to a government official in order for you to get the permit or anything like that. And I have talked about the independent courts, which are happy and are hungry to actually try and convict ministers. They are always sniffing around us whenever newspapers write stories about us. So we appear in courts there without any protection. And if you are found to fall short, even in your official capacity in terms of complying with the law, they make awards against the government, and we have to uphold the decisions of the courts. And of course, we do, as do many other African countries, have access to international markets that you'll be able to enjoy, especially when you come from those developed countries where you have to reciprocate in terms of access to markets. You are able to access the international markets without having to reciprocate because of the access that we have as a developing country. And we offer, of course, the best things, which is peace, security, and stability, both politically and also in terms of macroeconomic stability. We are reforming a number of our sectors which were previously predominated by government to open them up to private sector investment, including the energy sector, where really we have some of the best potential for generating energy, especially renewable energy, for export to the region, where we have an integrated market in Southern Africa and East Africa, and you can therefore generate and supply to government and also export outside of Namibia. We have a modern and well-developed financial sector that is very highly profitable. So you are welcome to actually invest in banking activities. We were very happy that we were able to have some of the international organizations issuing their bonds in Namibia by collecting savings from Namibia, because we actually have very high savings rates. We export capital, and there is an opportunity therefore for investors in the financial sector to invest in this sector so that you can harvest these savings that are very large and reinvest into the lucrative investment opportunities that we offer in Namibia. So Namibia is welcome for business. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for those remarks. Our Excellencies and distinguished heads of delegations will now take their leave. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite those with the invitation cards to proceed to the Business and Private Sector Forum luncheon that is sponsored by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the food tent at the Upper Comesa grounds. Please note that the proceedings of the next session will begin at 2 p.m. Welcome.
The blue economy is basically about bringing together the challenge that we're facing with sustaining the health of the oceans, the health of our lakes, and the health of our rivers. And at the same time ensuring that we're enjoying the maximum opportunities that are presented by the seas, by the oceans, by the lakes, and by the rivers, to grow our economies and to create greater prosperity for our world. The blue economy is about bringing together the challenge of marine conservation, the challenge of dealing with pollution, the challenge of regaining the health of our oceans, the challenge of managing climate change as it relates to the seas and the oceans, and at the same time ensuring that we are building a great economy for our world that creates greater prosperity for our people. It is bringing together these two pillars so that we can have greater prosperity and have a safer planet in which to live for our children. For Kenya, the hosting of the Blue Economy Conference is a singular determination of the President of the country.
Oceans, we know, not only provide great value in maintaining life, sustaining climatic conditions for all of us, but also provide enormous value in the form of the blue economy that can be tapped to help accelerate economic growth and fight poverty in many of our nations.
It is His Excellency the President who has recognized that we have not been able to maximize the opportunities for our country, for our people, for our environment that have been brought about by the fact that Kenya is blessed with having the seas, over 1,000 kilometers of sea-facing land and cities and populations, millions of people living along our lake regions and our rivers, and yet we have not been able to maximize the opportunities presented by these enormous and greatly rich water sources for our economy and for our people. Welcome to the Sustainable Blue Economy Conference in Nairobi, Kenya. It is your opportunity to make your contribution to make this a more prosperous world while making sure we protect our planet. The blue economy is basically about bringing together the challenge that we're facing with sustaining the health of the oceans, the health of our lakes, and the health of our rivers. And at the same time ensuring that we're enjoying the maximum opportunities that are presented by the seas, by the oceans, by the lakes, and by the rivers to grow our economies and to create greater prosperity for our world. The blue economy is about bringing together the challenge of marine conservation, the challenge of dealing with pollution, the challenge of regaining the health of our oceans, the challenge of managing climate change as it relates to the seas and the oceans, and at the same time ensuring that we are building a great economy for our world that creates greater prosperity for our people. It is bringing together these two pillars so that we can have greater prosperity and have a safer planet in which to live for our children. For Kenya,
sector where the women presence was not strong. So there are plenty of opportunities. We all talk about opportunities in the blue economy, and I think there is some work to do when it comes to involving women in the leadership, in the maritime sector, in science research, and all the value chains of the blue economy. So the forum was done, it was successful, and I can see some faces who have been in my event. And I would like to share the next slide, which is about some recommendation, if I can. So there is this is the recommendation. I would like to ask, we need from the government, private sector to have more communication about what is the blue economy. When we talk also about opportunities and potential, we need to make sure we are having the sustainable practices. And then we need for that, obviously, a budget for communication and media coverage, because media also, they have the responsibility to cover such important topics. And I can assure you that working previously in the media, it was not in the mainstream of us, the blue economy. But hopefully after such big events, and this is a great platform, media will start talk, because we need to increase the awareness of the public and the private sector. And then also we need to have more international, national, regional cooperation to share information, experience, expertise. And also, if I may, I may add, one of the results of the ABEF forum was to have education stage. And also the blue economy, it's everyone's business. Because we can't say nowadays it's business as usual, because it's not business anymore as usual. We need to change our behavior, our daily practices in order to have a sustainable economy.
Thank you, Leila. We have 1 minute left, so I would like to take one question if there is. We've heard about challenges. Yes, gentleman in there, if he can. I'm sorry, I will be able to take only one question, and later maybe you can approach our speakers during the lunch break, because we need to move on to the next session very shortly.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mwandaviro Mganga, and I come from this country, Kenya. My question is, how do we make the blue economy sustainable in the sense, where are the people? Because wherever I go around the African continent, starting from our home here in Kenya, the people around are very poor. The majority are left behind. We are talking about development, but all these plans, all these technologies we are having, yet the people remain very poor again. And even the environment, when you come questions like environment, there are many slums around the cities in the oceans and the lakes and so forth. So they continue to be populated. What kind of sustainable political, economic system should we have so that when you talk about sustainability, we carry the people along?
Thank you for the question. Maybe, yeah.
Thank you very much. I think good policies create lasting solutions. And we heard many of the speakers talking about really having good policies in place. In addition to good policies, I think we need also science to inform policies. We need good institutions. We also need technology, and we need what do I say? Information. You know, information is really lacking on blue economy. We also need, we said that if we have a shared challenge, a global challenge, we need to address it globally. So we need an enhanced cooperation. We need innovative financing. If we do all of that, we will see that harnessing the potential in blue economy is not only about implementing SDG 14. It will be really about implementing all the SDGs as a package in an integrated and inclusive manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Baranj.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that question. And I just want to add to the comment of my fellow panelists to say that sustainability is a three-legged stool. There's a social, there's an economic, and there's an ecological leg. And the three of them need to be right, otherwise the stool doesn't stand. There's no ecological sustainability without social sustainability. And there's no social sustainability without ecological sustainability. And what we need to do is ensure that the three legs stand right, and not one longer than the others.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have to close this session. Thank you for your attention. We will shortly move to the next session.
Thank you, distinguished panelists. The next panel of discussion is on governing modern cities. This segment will be moderated by Anastasia Raditya Lezaik. The panelists are Honorable Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, Governor of Kisumu County, Mr. Fan Wei, Chairman of the People Political Consultative Conference of Gwangbaijiang District of Chengdu, and Dr. Abdul Rahman Lamin, Social Science Specialist at the UNESCO. Welcome and thank you.
So welcome back to the last session before the lunch break, and we're moving to governing modern cities in the section of managing and financing our cities. So we have, our speakers were introduced, and we still have 15 minutes this time. So I will start with Mr. Abdul Rahman from UNESCO to give us more of a global point of view, and then I'll move to our two governors and mayors. Yes.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers for the invitation to share some perspectives in this very unique conference. I think talking about governing modern cities, one has to obviously put that in the context of what is happening in the world today. And I need not belabor the 2063 Africa Agenda and the 2030 UN Agenda, the context within which we are having this conversation. I think it is clear when you look at both agendas, there is a significant role for cities, for local government authorities, and for municipalities in ensuring that the global commitments and the regional commitments that have been made will indeed be delivered upon, and specifically that those authorities can harness the blue economy, which we are increasingly beginning to learn about, and the opportunities therefrom. Having said that global context, I just want to highlight three key issues that I think are going to be very important and instructive when it comes to managing modern cities vis-a-vis the blue economy. The first one I think we have to put on the agenda, and I'm sure some of that have come up over the last 2 days, is the whole question of inclusion. I think we can no longer pretend to have a world where we are so prosperous, there are so many opportunities, and yet the vast majority of our populations are left behind. And indeed, if you locate that in the context of the global agenda, inclusion is very key, because the consequences, in fact, the negative consequences of lack of inclusion is one that we don't even want to contemplate. So I think as we move forward, cities working with their partners at the local level, but also at the national level, will increasingly have to find mechanisms to put in place that will promote inclusion. We live in a very polarized world today, unfortunately. We tend to talk about leaving no one behind, but if you just look at the rhetoric that we have, whether it's at the global level or even within our communities, against those who look different from ours, it begins to tell you that, in fact, we need to work a little bit much more to make sure that we indeed create more inclusive societies. Now, this can be done through policies, and I know that many local government authorities, many cities are already, within the context of SDG 11, for instance, beginning to put in place those mechanisms that could promote better inclusion and more citizenship participation. The second point I think I should mention, it has been alluded to again, but I think you cannot overemphasize it, is technology. Technology is a fact of our lives every day. In our private lives, we live and we breathe technology. Increasingly, governments at national level, at local level, are beginning to use technology to not only provide services to citizens, but also to ensure that citizens are able to participate in governance. I think we need to build on those experiences. To the extent that technology may have some consequences in terms of the way we apply it and overuse it, I think it can do a lot of good, moving forward. So technology is going to be key. How local governments are able to build the necessary technological infrastructure to make sure that, in fact, government as a social contract is indeed one in which there is that dialectic between the citizens and the government. And technology is a huge enhancer that we have to definitely look at. The last point I want to make is the question of the youth. Now, this debate is not new. Globally, in our respective regions, there is always a discussion around the demographic dividend. Some people argue that if we harness the youth resources that we have very well, it can be an opportunity. Others say it's a time bomb waiting to happen. My point, though, is to say that it doesn't really matter where you stand one way or the other, but I think to a very large extent, our discussion around the youth problematic, I would like to say, has been a little bit more simplistic. I think we need to move beyond just romanticizing the issue, but ensuring that we indeed invest in data, research, knowledge that can inform policymakers to be able to understand the context in which we are talking about. To say just simplistically that if we don't invest in the youth, it is going to create problems, well, that may be true, but let's try to mobilize data. Let's try to put more resources into research, and let's get the youth to be a part of that discussion so that at the end of the day, we really know what we are talking about when we say harnessing the demographic dividend so that it can inform us to address the problem. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lamin. It's perfect that you mentioned technology because I will move to Professor Anyang Nyong-o from Kisumu County with its smart city and one of the best technology information system in Africa. So I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think I'll go straight, although I had a PowerPoint presentation. It will roll there, but I will not follow it exactly. First, the topic we have been given to discuss this morning is actually subject to a whole conference because it's very important. But I think that when we look at modern cities, the cities that we know today, most of them face common problems. Whether they've been there for a long time or they were just born 30 or 40 years ago, they face all common problems despite their historical development and cultural backgrounds. One problem that whether you go to New York or Beijing or London, you'll face is unemployment. Lots of people were unemployed with attendant social and security implications, which requires attention of those who govern. The other one is inadequate housing or inadequate settlements, leading to informal settlements. Now, you'd wonder whether in a place like New York there are informal settlements, but what usually happens is that the old areas like Harlem, where the poor people lived, once they are gentrified, the poor move elsewhere and create settlements which are not as good as those in the place they left. So this is a constant problem in almost all cities. The third problem that faces is environmental sustainability, environmental problems. Certain cities are becoming concrete jungles, especially in Africa, where you think that building a city is putting brick and mortar together, and you forget green space, you forget the place of culture and art, so that you go to a city, it's just walls and concrete streets with very little greenery. Even on those walls, you don't see any works of art. Like if you go to Oakland in California, in San Francisco, people express their culture by graffiti or works of art, which make the city lively. Now, we in Africa must be very careful that when we build cities, even if we deal with informal settlements, we give place for green space and for culture and art. We appreciate theaters and plays and so on, and create some space for dancing and music and things like those. The other one, as I think Abdul Rahman has mentioned, is the issue of inclusivity, representation in governance. Now, with democracy on the rise, or the blooming of democracy, most people in cities who have been in the past not included in decision-making in government or in expressing their ideas or their preferences sometimes pose what governments call a danger to governance. They're not really a danger. They just want to be included and they want to be part of the action. Now, quite often you'll find that the structures of governance that has been established for a long time do not allow space for these people. And that's why you find riots and rebellion in cities. because established structures and power structures do not think that these people are part of the political game. Now, let me go to one issue which is very important. Notwithstanding the fact that we have problems with informal settlement, one issue that we must confront in all cities is the issue of planning. Planning means that you make a choice on what you're going to do. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere once said that to plan is to choose. If you're going to have inclusive cities, you must plan for it. Abrahman has said, planning requires that you have data, you have information, and you make a decision on some very difficult options. Now, for example, how do we keep our cities clean? We earlier heard that we can keep our cities clean by telling our people to change their attitudes towards dealing with waste or towards dealing with the non-biodegradable waste. I would propose that as much as possible, even if we are going to ask our people to change their attitudes, we must make the things we use, for example, for carrying things from supermarkets, as biodegradable as possible. I would have said more, but I think that the last thing I want to emphasize is that the idea of public order in our cities is not a question of just having armed policemen. We governors don't have armed policemen. We don't have the security on our side, but making people be informed of what is in their interest and engaged is very important. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Nyong'o. Let's quickly move to Mr. Fan Wei from Chengdu City. Let's take within the 4 minutes time frame. Thank you.
女士们、先生们，非常荣幸受邀参加这个全球可持续蓝色经济会议，很高兴和大家分享来自中国成都的经验。
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to be invited to the first session of Sustainable Blue Economy Conference. I'm delighted to share with you some experience from Chengdu, China.
成都是中国西部的重要城市，拥有2300多年的悠久历史，富有强烈的创新精神。
Chengdu, an important city in West China, with a time-honored history of more than 2,300 years, is full of innovative spirit.
近年来，我们积极运用信息技术，推动产业升级，提升城市治理，改善民生和完善政务服务，日夜成为中国领军的智慧城市。
In recent years, we actively promote industrial upgrading, enhance governance level, improve people's well-being, and better public service through developing information technology, making us a leading smart city in China.
受成都市人民政府市长卢强先生的委托，我将把成都建设智慧城市方面的情况做一个简要的介绍。
Entrusted by His Excellency Lord Chang, Mayor of Chengdu Municipal Government, I will brief you our efforts to build Chengdu a smart city.
一、统筹推进智慧城市体系架构。
First, we advance smart city system framework as a whole.
成都市政府成立了专门的机构，负责统筹推进大数据产业发展和电子政务管理工作。
Chengdu Municipal Government established a specialized agency to advance big data industry development and e-governance management as a whole.
对智慧城市进行了整体性的规划和设计，明确了建设的目标、总体框架、建设的内容和实施的路径。
We plan and design smart city as an integrity with clear working goals, general framework, construction contents, and implementation path.
加强公共数据统筹管理，制定出台 公共数据管理应用、电子政务管理项目等制度。
We strengthen the general administration over public statistics and formulate regulations on public statistics management application and e-governance project management.
完善智慧城市标准体系，推进智慧城市国际标准的对标工作。
We perfect the smart city standard system to propel smart city standard benchmarking process.
二、加强智慧城市基础工程建设。
Second, we improve smart city foundation projects construction.
成都大力推进政务信息资源整合、共享和开放应用，构建统一标准的政务云平台，实现各级政务部门信息互通、数据共享、业务协同，推动政府数据开放，已向社会开放了2200多万条数据资源。
Chengdu Municipal Government built government services cloud platform with the unified standards to promote government information resources integration, sharing, and application, and to realize information and data sharing and business coordination among government departments of all levels. We continue sharing government statistics to the public. Till now, more than 22 million pieces of information resources have been released to our people.
夯实城市信息基础设施，实现光纤宽带网络和无线宽带网络广泛覆盖，城市基础设施智能化建设取得明显的进展，初步实现了地上地下空间资源的统一管理。
We improve the information infrastructure of our city. Now Chengdu is extensively covered by cable broadband network and wireless broadband network. The internationalization of city infrastructure achieves remarkable results, especially the unified management of spatial resources of ground and underground.
三、构建城市智慧化应用体系。
Third, we build intellectualization application system of our city.
成都围绕民生发展、城市管理、创新实际需求，推动形成完善的城市智慧化应用体系。
Chengdu Municipal Government motivates the formulation of a complete city intellectualization application system according to the practical demands of better livelihood and urban management.
包括打造一体化的网上政务服务，为市民和企业提供多样化的便捷办事渠道。
Our efforts include, but are not limited, as follows: to forge an integrated online government service system in order to provide diversified and convenient service channels to citizens and enterprises.
建成健康、教育、社会保障信息服务平台和公共文化数字化服务体系，为市民提供便捷的全方位的公共服务。
To build information service platforms and build a public cultural digitalized service system of healthcare, education, social security to provide to our citizens convenient and comprehensive services.
建立了覆盖衣、食、住、行、娱等生活服务属系的 O2O 便民服务体系，为市民提供更便捷的城市生活服务。
To establish O2O convenience services system, which covers basic necessities of life, namely clothing, food, accommodation, transportation, and entertainment, etc.
建立智能的城市运行管理体系，推进数字化城市管理、智慧交通服务、食品药品安全监管。
To build smart operation and management system for our city to promote digitalized urban administration, smart transportation service, and food and drug safety supervision.
实施智慧环保服务，建设绿色宜居生态环境。
and to implement smart environment protection to speed up building a green and livable ecological environment.
总之，成都智慧城市建设要达到的目标是实现各类大数据的聚合，支撑城市精准化治理和资源高效配置，促进城市的可持续发展。
In conclusion, as a smart city, our aim is to realize city's sustainable development through precise governance and efficient resources allocation by aggregating all types of big data.
Thank
you, Mr. Fanway. Thank you, Ms. Interpreter. We're 2 minutes behind schedule, but I'm happy to take one question if there is interest. Yes, the gentleman behind.
Yeah, thank you. Michael, I represent Organization of African Youth, Kenyan chapter. My input will be the issue around demographic dividend. I think there's a lot of information around it and there's evidence. For example, the issue around Arab Spring and Burkina Faso. So my question to the panel is, how best do you ensure that young people, especially men and young women, are not left behind in the blue economy discussions, especially in their communities where the resources are to be extracted, and in a way that they're also involved in the management of these resources to build cities that are more sustainable? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Maybe Dr. Lamin for the inclusion question.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with the speaker that there's a lot of information out there on demographic dividend. My point, though, is that for that information to be useful to policymakers and to really address the problems, we're going to have to do more to contextualize it. We have to move beyond the simplistic notion of saying just because people are unemployed, they are prone to violence. I think we have to get some data to be able to inform that conversation. Second point, and I think the speaker puts his finger on it, as to how young people can be involved, especially in trying to access the kind of information that will enable them harness the blue economy. I think inclusion, we made the point, the governor of Kisumu was also quite strong in making the point about inclusivity and participatory governance. I mean, at the end of the day, we cannot continue to talk for the youth, at the youth, and not getting them included in the conversation. So we must create spaces in the current environment that we find ourselves to make sure that young people are indeed part and parcel of defining the problem and the solution so that they are able to get the information that they need to take advantage of it.
Maybe Governor Nyong-O, you have some remarks?
I think we should see young people as a resource and an opportunity. For example, I'll give you a concrete example. If you're going to clean the city of Nairobi, for example, you can choose to give it to a monopoly, a farm, which are tractors and lorries and so on to clean the city, or you can choose it to give it to the youth who will give various parts of the city and they clean it and they deliver the waste to a certain point, which is the same thing that a monopoly or a highly technical resourced farm will do. In Kisumu, we have done that. Give the opportunity to the youth and the women to clean the city, and they will clean the city even much better than the monopolies which get tenders from city government to clean the city. So you have to make a choice and give the opportunity to women and the youth to do something which monopolies also do. But monopolies don't employ as many people as you do when you put the women and youth at work. I think that's what you plan, what are you going to do? And if you do so, then you'll find solutions.
Do you have some remark? No? If there is no remark, I'm happy to close this session, and I wish you good luck for the afternoon session. Thank you.
Excellencies, honorable ministers, heads of delegation, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now break for lunch and we will be back at 2 o'clock. Lunch will be served at the back of this hall. Invitation cards for dinner will be distributed later. Please, let's resume at 2 o'clock to start off the segment with financing investments and revenue circulation. Thank you and good afternoon. Excellencies, distinguished guests, governors, senators, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for an interesting session. We will break for lunch. Lunch is from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. We invite you to pick up a box lunch from the back of Savo Hall A. We will adjourn and come back at 2 p.m. And after the break, we will start with a session on finance and revenue circulation, moderated by Handoko Adi Susanto. Thank you and good afternoon. Your Excellencies, distinguished governors and senators, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for an interesting session. We will break for lunch. Lunch is from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. We invite you to pick up a box lunch from the back of Savo Hall A. We'll adjourn and come back at 2 p.m. And after the break, we'll start with a session on financing investment and revenue circulation, moderated by Handoko Adi Susanto. Please also take some time to visit the fantastic Arts and Crafts Fair located at the left side of the main gate as you depart, hosted by the Kenyan people and the famously known as Maasai Market. Please also take time to visit the Archaeological Museum at Charter Hall inside City Hall, which has a magnificent display of blue economy, archaeology, and heritage that binds us all together. Karibuni, thank you once again, and good afternoon.